Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy. Why do you get sick? Simple question. We get diagnosed with a disease, but the doctor generally doesn't tell us what caused it. Well, maybe with COVID, they might tell you, hey, it's COVID, it's virus. But they don't tell you how to prevent it. They don't tell you the pathway that you got there. And if you look up what causes aging, for instance, I've asked that question to a lot of different AIs here lately and over the years. And it seems like the general answer I get is something along the lines, our body's inability to maintain stability. And so my first question is why? Well, that's going to kind of be the focus of today, why. I'm Randall Laughlin. We're here on the Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I spent 31 years in the Navy, got an invitation to Vietnam, an invitation to Bosnia, flew for 16 years. First degree is in chemistry. I have a bunch of different degrees, a bunch of different professional certifications. But my purpose, about 12 and a half years ago, my wife came down with breast cancer. Actually, 12 and a half years, she had surgery for it. And I got back involved with chemistry. That was my first love in my life, and second, as a sophomore in high school. Just fell in love with it because it answered the questions why. It seemed like you always had that, who, when, et cetera, it's always there, but the why always seemed to be integral to me. So I really started diving into what's causing this side effect. What can I do about it? This symptom, whatever. And so I basically started shifting my focus from, at that point in time, I was retired, from motivation, inspiration, self-improvement, over toward health and wellness, longevity, aging issues. And I just wrote my first book my second book on aging, longevity. Is called Aging Sucks. And the guesswork there is hope. And I'm talking, it's not a health book, it's not an anti-aging book, it's not a longevity book. It's a book about understanding the complexity of aging at the molecular level in the body. But I convert it to plain English so that people understand what's there. Because there's a lot of technical words, but I try to keep it plain English. But those are the things that are there. And in the process of my wife's cancer, the recovery, everything went fine. It's really re-inspired my love for chemistry. So that's what I'm doing, and I love it nowadays. But if you're watching this program today on YouTube, please seriously consider subscribing if you're not, the USA Global TV and Radio Network, or the Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Both of them are showing our shows today. But as I'm looking at today's slide deck, let me go ahead and bring it up here and get this thing set up. First one. There we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about health, a little bit about aging, a little bit about what you can do about it. So kind of a little bit, but they all focus on the why. And I think in order to really bring things through, I think most of us understand inflammation far better than we understand other aspects of things. Something's inflamed, you can see it. It's red, it's sore, it's swollen. You can't use it. A lot of things tell us that we have inflammation. But those kind of inflammation, let's say that I ran my hand into a wall or something. It's all things done, and it's really and truly to better our body, to make us stronger. But there's other inflammation that really causes havoc in the body, and I call this the inflammatory spiral, because it's the situation is something bounces into something else, and that bounces into something else, and that bounces into something else, and all of a sudden you're going, all these things are moving. So let's move on down the road so I have something to talk about as opposed to that. So I've showed in the past the basic normal curve, the one that comes up and goes down. We've seen it all throughout our earlier lives. And in the middle of that curve is what I call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hard, it's not too soft, it's just right. Well, that's where our bodies stabilize. That's where that's where everything kind of comes to. But if we eat too much, we gain too much weight. If we never exercise, we get too soft. And so we have an equilibrium that keeps us nice and healthy in a particular mode. But we have these other things that are always occurring to us. This is happening, that's happening, and they bounce back and forth. And most of the time, our bodies are super good about keeping us in balance. And that is the body's job. It's all your life. It's you have a cold, you're healed. You catch COVID, you're healed. You get the mumps, you're healed. Our bodies are really, really, really good about addressing a problem and keeping us healthy. And so we want to stay in that equilibrium zone, but there's several times that things happen and we just get bounced out. I mentioned a minute ago about stress, inflammation. There's two different kinds. The useful kind is called acute. It's temporary, it's localized, let's say your hand. Your body's autoimmune system, it does automatically. It's going to isolate the damage. It's going to cause swelling that keeps everything out. It's going to fight infection. You may end up seeing some white, discharge, pus, whatever. These are the white blood cells and stuff. These are things there. But all in all, the body is, okay, first thing to do is protection. Second thing to do is let's start the recovery, repair, recovery, adaptation, get stronger, make everything work. So it's short term. It's what we do all the time. It's part of our adaptation nature, part of our survival. And so we get back and we're right back to where we were, sometimes stronger. But chronic inflammation is totally different. And chronic inflammation, years ago, in fact, not that many years ago, before I wrote this book, I used to tell and write about, I'd say chronic low-level cellular inflammation is the genesis of 95% of all our diseases. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that statement. It's just that is only one of a dozen different things in our bodies. And a dozen, 12, I'm listing as not just generically a dozen. Yeah, actually a dozen. There's 12 things that are called hallmarks of aging that each one in and of itself, like chronic inflammation, can cause aging. And so if I look at chronic inflammation, it's one that's not repaired, not adapted to, it's not easily resolved. It's not something that's isolated. It's in your kidneys, it's in your lungs, it's in wherever that inflammation is at. So it can become systemic, which means it's now in multiple systems in the body. And in and of itself, the recovery is very difficult. Your immune system just can't quite crack the shell of that one. And so it ends up, you look healthy, but inside something's happening, and you may not know about it for a while. And so, if you knew about it, you can take care of it to some degree. And we're going to talk about what those degrees are. But you end up in this spiral, this self-amplifying loop, this thing that just kind of goes around. And as such, every time it goes around, it gets just a little bit bigger, and then just a little bit bigger, and then just a little bit bigger. And I call it accelerated biological aging. That because inflammation, even though it's an individual hallmark of aging, it also is one that interrupts and distracts and sets off, triggers other hallmarks. So let's just briefly chat very much about a couple of the hallmarks of health. You have 9 hallmarks of health, you have 12 hallmarks of disease. The 12 hallmarks of disease create damage in our body. The 9 hallmarks of health support the repair mechanisms in our body. Aging occurs when damage exceeds our ability to repair. Normally our body has enough repair capability, we're healthy. But those occasions where we don't have that, then our body actually starts to age. And it's not necessarily, inflammation is the cause, but it's not the core problem once the show gets on the road. I have what's called compartmentalization or barrier integrity. These are the technical terms for the health. But that just basically means that the protection, your protection system, the barriers in your body, the cellular membranes, the blood vessel membranes, the lung, everything that we have has a outer covering. Your basic protection is not working. Up there at the top, it says maintenance homeostasis. It's an interesting word. It just means, your balance is not working. Balance, not necessarily balance, but the balance of those particular organs or systems or functions of the body are not working the way they're supposed to, because some, either one or many, in many cases many, parts of the hallmark of aging are activating that particular deal, and that's causing the balance to go out of deal. Okay, responses to perturbation. Another great word, homeostasis, perturbation. But what does it mean? Your damage control is not working. You have a particular function that is occurring, and they call it, this proteostasis of anyway. I call it, your damage control. It's typically things happen and it fixes itself. Take a DNA. That's that spiral thing that rolls around in your cells. It gets hit all the time, 24/7, 365, every second of every day. It's being constantly attacked. But your DNA has almost a half of it, has 5, maybe 6 different independent mechanisms that identifies the damage and fixes it, identifies the damage, and just goes on and on and on. It's constantly in repair mode. And so in this particular case, I have 3 different hallmarks of health, and they're all under attack from inflammation. And in one case, my damage control is not working, my balance control is not working, and my protective barriers, my covering is not working. So all those things need some level of attention. So why is all that happening? Well, let's look at a couple of the hallmarks of aging for a moment. I have what they call genetic and epigenetic stress. Well, basically, I have a switching problem. I have things down there that go back and forth, kind of like a communication, but they're actually little switches that turn things on and off. And so I have a problem. Well, what can I do about it? Well, if I have that particular problem, not smoking, reducing alcohol, avoiding it, toxins, getting decent sleep, good exercise, watching my nutrition, reducing stress, all of those will tamper down, control genomic and epigenetic stress. Okay, then I have another one over there called proteostasis and autophagy failure. Okay, basically a QC problem. I have a problem with being able to clean up and maintain good quality, healthy, functioning parts of my cells, parts of my body. Well, autophagy is supposed to go in there periodically and clean up and repair. The proteostasis is the one that's basically the QC department in your body. So you have things that happen, and that's the one that keeps everything in balance. How do I address some of those issues? Well, exercise. In this particular case, protein is a good one, because protein is part of the problem of the failure of QC to recognize that protein is not structurally the way it's supposed to be. It's bent, it's folded, it's out of kilter a little bit. And so the QC program goes over there, straightens it up. Okay, fine, you're functional again. But if it keeps falling over, now we have a problem. Fasting, overeating, a lot of things there will fix it. I call it hitting the mTOR brake. Autophagy is one side of our body's repair system. Well, the other side is the growing system. It's called mTOR. A little m, capital T, capital O, capital R, mTOR, T-O-R. And that's your mammalian or mechanistic target of rapamycin. And so when you're exercising a lot, you're not getting things, your visceral fat improves. Anyway, we end up more in a growth mode than we do in a repair mode. And so I say, hit the brake on the mTOR, because it's just, okay, I can do that by adding fiber to my diet, concentrating on my visceral fat, like I say, protein, exercise. Mitochondrial dysfunction, probably just as important, if not more so in some cases, than the inflammation, because that's another one that just kind of targets everything in sight with a shotgun and just really triggers off a lot. So I'll end up with, I call it, if I have a mitochondrial dysfunction, basically it means I'm not producing energy. I have an energy problem. The grid is not working the way it's supposed to. I'm not getting 120 volts. I'm getting brownouts. I'm getting blackouts. So I end up with, how do I fix it? Well, I need to improve the health and quality of my mitochondria. The best way is by exercise, strength and aerobic. I can reduce my toxins. I can improve my nutrition, get my fiber into my diet, quality sleep. Barrier dysfunction and dysbiosis, that's a gut problem. I have something going on down there that is really and truly upsetting my gut. And when your gut is upset, your brain is generally upset at the same time. So what's causing it? Generally speaking, most of the time, it's some food issue. It could be an allergy, it could be an irritant, it could be a toxin. But anyway, the foods are generally the problems down there. We may not have the right distribution of everything we need. So I need fiber, I need good quality food. Smoking and alcohol cause a problem. NSAIDs, your Tylenol and things like that, create a lot of problems. Antibiotics really disrupt everything. Sleep, you really need good sleep because that's where your repairs occur at. So if you have gut problems, there are things the doctor's going to give you may not necessarily be as the best thing in the world, but sometimes you just need that. I need the help right now and now. I can't wait. And I've been there myself. I know exactly. I'll trade off a couple of days just to get rid of whatever I have right this moment. Okay. Our bodies have an aging program. Our cells have a certain finite life. You know, let's say the cell replicates and replicates, and let's just pick a number, 30. I have 30 planned evolutions. That cell is going to replicate 30 times, and then there's a program that says end of life, die, and that cell dies. That's the way our bodies work. But sometimes they don't get the word. Sometimes a program has a snafu, especially if we are doing things. If I'm smoking, if I'm overindulging in alcohol, if I'm overweight, if I have insulin issues, if I have a lot of stress, and it could be the foods I'm eating, it could be loss of sleep, it could be over-exercising, under-exercising, it could be not managing stress. Many things cause our bodies to react. And when that body reacts to that particular problem, we have a term, it's called senescence. A lot of people refer to it as zombie cells. And so I have this zombie cell that is now created because it will not die. The death of that cell was programmed to happen, but didn't happen. And so now I have this zombie cell, and let me take a look at it. Let's assume this one here in the center that we're looking at is a zombie cell. Well, it's metabolically active, actually very active. And it's like you're somewhere and somebody sneezes and you kind of look around a little bit and you wonder, especially if you're in church or someplace where everything is really compact and you can't move around. COVID, perfect example. You know, we all wore masks and things like that. But because that, we're not talking about germs, we're talking about actually molecules in our body. But they act as if they're a germ or a virus, and they'll bounce up against another one, a healthy cell, and they will corrupt it. They will actually cause that healthy cell to become unhealthy. And so we start having what they call a contagion effect. But basically it means it's like a bomb going off and shrapnel's going everywhere, and that shrapnel is now causing damage everywhere it goes. So normally your immune system handles all this. It's not a problem. But sometimes by the things that we do, by not eating properly, not taking care of stress, whatever, these are the things that cause our bodies to do things that we shouldn't be doing. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it for right now, because I do want to do a commercial break before we end the show. So let's go ahead and plan on doing a commercial break now, and then we'll come back in just a moment.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
Brett Laughlin again. That's the slide I want to be on. No, I want to be on the next slide. Let's go there. Altered communication is one of those hallmarks of aging. I mentioned earlier about the genomic and epigenetic signaling issues there on the front. And that's basically a switching problem. This is actually a signaling problem. Sometimes the signal gets sent from this molecule to this one, it's saying, do this. And that goes up to the brain, and we have signalings going on all the time. If you think of the old telephone systems back in the 1920s and 30s, and you see operators sitting there plugging people in, our bodies kind of work the same way. A signal comes up, okay, I want to make a telephone call over to Aunt Susie. Okay, so she plugs into Aunt Susie, and that connection is now made. Well, we have these signals that go back and forth, and it tells our body, okay, this is what you need to do. Digestion to start, breathing to continue, increase your heart rate, whatever it may happen to be. The body is constantly monitoring and making adjustments. But sometimes the signals don't always get through. They don't always go to where they need to go. They don't always have the right instructions. Sometimes the sender is in error. Sometimes the receiver is in error. All sorts of problems occur. And that's part of one of these hallmarks that as these signaling issues become a problem in our body, a lot of chemical reactions are going on that cause this not to work right. So I have a general repair mechanism, but my repairs require signals to say, go repair this. And when I don't have that signal, it can't go repair because it doesn't know where to go or when to go or how much to bring. And so I have down here in the right-hand corner, it says stem cell reserves. Our bodies make stem cells. These are cells that are basically blank whiteboards. And you need a brain cell, you need a heart cell, you need a lung cell, you need a leg cell, leg muscle cell, bone cell. These are cells that are readily available. My body says, okay, I need to replace that kidney cell. That cell is deposited where the dying cell just occurred. We talked about, I didn't call the word apoptosis, but the senescent is occurring. The cell is programmed to die. Well, I have another cell programmed to go in its place. It's not like I lose that cell and that's it forever. I actually have the ability to replace those. And there's a lot of things we can do to actually go ahead and generate more stem cells in our bodies. Senolytic is the general term that they talk about of being able to regenerate these stem cells. Now, there's a lot of medical ways you can do it too, and they're very expensive, but there's a lot of natural ways of doing it. But if I start having a problem with the signaling, I don't get my reserves. I have the Army sitting over there ready to go, but nobody's talking to them, telling them what's happening. They're just there. I also have another part of my aging process that my Army is facing attrition. They call it a plague or something. And my 20,000 troops over there are now down to 2,000. It's like one of my hallmarks of aging is called stem cell exhaustion. I don't have as many as I need. I can't do all the repairs that I should be doing. So, but in this particular case, because of inflammation, then inflammation's irritating, instigating, triggering a problem with the signals. So I have signals that are happening, stress, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, the ultra-processed foods. Until 1976, we really didn't have a major problem with obesity in the United States. But when they started processing foods a little differently, and we get more stuff in that processed foods nowadays than you know what to do with. Now we start having, literally not only here, but all around the world, that was the start date of getting what we're seeing nowadays as obesity. But again, right kinds of foods, fiber, stress, sleep, Mediterranean diet, they talk about that a lot because of the polyphenols primarily from the fruits and vegetables, but also from the olive oil. And we talk about omega-6, omega-3. Well, omega-3 is your healthy one. You keep the omega-6 in balance, then we're fine. 1-to-1 ratio, everybody's happy. And it starts getting outside of 3-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3. I can live with 3-to-1. I get 4 or 5, 6-to-1, 10-to-1. That becomes inflammation in the body. In other words, because of the foods we choose to eat, packaged foods, restaurant foods, that inflammation is created because of the oils the foods were prepared in, and now we're packaged and sent home with you. So that is part of the source of some of this. So if you go to a Mediterranean diet, that eliminates that source. So you're cutting off the fuel. But our sugar control, exercise, all of those things will bring it back in balance. But speaking, we're talking exercise, sleep, stress, and diet, nutrition. Those are all the things there that cause the problem. They're all the things that fix the problem. It's really interesting that we live in a world that the perfect world, we have everything we need. The imperfect world, they're the same thing. We're just using them differently. And what happens a lot of times in our bodies is we end up not only in this spiral that goes around and gets bigger, but we end up in these little loops. And these little loops can sometimes cascade into bigger loops. But in particular here, they're saying the damage cycle here on the left-hand side, loop A. They're saying here that our body, I have some dysfunctional cell, let's say mitochondria, and it releases a signal saying, hey, I'm not working right. That triggers an immune response because your immune system is there to fight something that's wrong. So the immune gets activated. But sometimes your immune system gets overactivated. And now we start ending up with a process that overactivation sometimes can call collateral stress. Now we end up with more stress, more inflammation, more dysfunctional cells, and it kind of just goes round and round and round. So that's loop A. Loop B, we're calling my maintenance cycle here. My cleaning mechanisms are not working. There's office, the trash is building up. The parts that need to be repaired aren't there. So I end up with a lot of what they call cellular debris, parts that aren't needed, parts that can't work. So now when it doesn't happen, I'm not producing the energy. I'm starting to have inflammatory responses to that. I end up with more oxidation, less maintenance is being done, less repair is being done, and I end up in another spiral going around and round and round. Loop C, the senescent cell, the old age cell. Now I have cells that are out there. They should be dead, but they're not. They're zombie cells, and they're creating a lot of problems with neighboring cells. They're actually causing those neighboring cells to become zombie cells themselves. And so now, instead of having just a couple zombie cells, now I have 20, 40, 80. I end up with more, and each of those are creating a problem. So now I have a loop over here, but that loop is growing also. So I have 3 different loops. They're all kind of cascading outward and growing. And our body is just sitting there looking at it. What can I do? Well, your body's been fixing itself forever and ever and ever. No matter what you had in your life, it got fixed. But when you need to fix something, you got to stop the driver. In this particular case, we're talking about inflammation. Well, how did you get the inflammation? Well, if it's an injury, body's going to pretty much handle itself. If it's a metabolic issue, maybe you OD on sugar, you love that, whatever. Or maybe it's the food you choose to do. Maybe it's you're not getting the right mixture of things. You don't have the right enzymes and proteins and whatever that the body can process. Lots of things, because you have too much of something or too little of something, create a problem. Might be a gut issue. That's a big one. A lot of us see that, fairly often. Your gut is 80% of your gut is your immune system. You have the lining of the gut that opens up very tiny holes and lets the nutrients go through. You digest your food and you get out your iron, your calcium, your magnesium, and the other things that you need. And it goes through the wall of your intestine, through your immune system into your bloodstream. You start having a problem with the gut. It's called dysbiosis. Now I have an issue where maybe the holes become a little bit bigger, and that now is letting a lot of garbage from my intestine into the immune system. Well, the immune system is going to fight it. But if it's too much, it's a losing battle. That immune system is going to be worn out in a very short period of time. And now all of that stuff from your gut is leaking into your bloodstream, going anywhere, who knows where, into your body. Now the body has its own repair mechanisms that it's going to overwhelm. And you just don't have the ability to fight it anymore. So a lot of times our inflammation comes from the foods we eat or don't eat or eat not enough of. Now, I can just as easily get some of those gut issues from stress. I can get some gut issues from not having enough hydration. I'm not getting the movement I need. I'm not getting the sleep I need to make the repairs. It's not just a single cause. It's not a single cause. It's not a single fix. It's not a single pathway. So our aging process is multiple trains going down multiple tracks at the same time. But you have the ability to do some level of coordinated attack on those trains. So if I look at this thing as some kind of meshed gear system, aging is not the accumulation of time as we think. That's what we see. But we end up with these loops, these spirals that just kind of get out of control and we never get them back. I make an example several times of, I see people that get into their early 80s, 80, they're okay, they're self-sufficient. 82, they come down with something and they never get back to being self-sufficient again. 84, now that they never got back to, they had something worse happen. And now, they're with a walker, they're with a wheelchair, or they can't get out of bed. It seems like we get to a certain age and all of a sudden our bodies are just not repairing itself. And we go down a rung on the ladder. We can't get back up again. And so I see this, I've mentioned it many times in other broadcasts. We end up going down a step or two at a time. We can't get back up to the top to where we were. And that's what our bodies are supposed to be able to do, get us back to where they were. That stability that we talked about in the very first slide. I want to be able to maintain stability, equilibrium. If I can do that, I'm fine. But if I can't, my repair systems are impaired. My damage goes uncontrolled. It mounts up. And each of these things seem to be reinforcing. Those gears are reinforcing each other. They're intermeshed. And so I have an old age gear that's creating a problem. I have a damaged gear that's creating a problem. I have a maintenance failure gear that's creating a problem. And they're all meshing together and they're all helping each other along the line to create a bigger problem. And so I end up with a situation where if I'm balance, a tug of war, whatever you want to look at, I have repair versus damage. So if damage is winning, I'm going to have a accelerated aging. I'm going to have higher risk of disease. If repair is winning, then I'm going to have the benefit of being healthy. So I have my hallmarks of health be on the right-hand side, the blue part of this fulcrum. Those are the ones that keep my repair systems humming. Those are the ones that I really need in order to do whatever else is out there. However, I only have 9 of those systems in my body that support health, but I have 12 systems in my body that create damage. And so the drivers of damage, if they get really heavy and accumulate, they start outweighing my body's ability to fix it. So I need to keep the balance, or I need to keep the repair such that I'm not allowing my body to get back to equilibrium. So inflammation is one of those ones that kind of really does a lot of damage because it activates so many other parts of my body that are really and truly a problem. And so let me kind of see if I can summarize this up here in 1 or 2 slides left. Okay, so if I look at this thing from a ledger perspective, I have on the bad side of the house, I have sedentary behavior, obesity, metabolic stress. My foods are not the right kind, not the right nutrition levels. Anyway, foods become a major problem. And so that becomes a metabolic issue. If I'm not getting my sleep, I'm not treating my stress, I end up with a lot of issues. That's part of my repair, but it's really and truly repair and recovery both. If I'm excess alcohol, if I'm smoking, if I just can't quite get rid of something, now I end up with a lot of what I'm going to call immune issues, because the immune system's in there trying to control everything, but you're taking in too much toxins or pathogens from various things that you're putting on your skin, eating, drinking, smoking, whatever. But on the good side of the house, same things that cause the problem, your diet, nutrition, your stress, your sleep, your exercise. On the right side of the house, I have regular exercise to improve my metabolic and inflammatory, because exercise is actually going to create more mitochondria inside your cells, which are energy producers. So I get better gut stability, better stability. I get good sleep. Sleep is where my repair occurs. If I get good sleep, basically, that the good guys are going out there and doing the job they need to do. If I get bad sleep, I'm not. My repair crew has to come back in early because I don't have the time to spend with them. But if I get a good, decent night's sleep, good quality sleep, my repairs are happening on schedule, on time, and whatever has to happen. And then the last one is the toxin issue. If I avoid smoking, avoid alcohol, maintain regular medical care, and that's a big one. A lot of people don't have that routine medical care. I've told people many, many times. My last time I did not have a annual physical was 1967. I went in the military in '68, and I've had an annual physical 31 years of the military, and I've had a physical every year since I got out of the military. It's one of those things I believe in. Catch something early, you can fix it. If you don't, now you start having a problem. So, but if you can identify something early, you can work on it, get it fixed, and that's a big deal. You don't want to get 2 or 3 or 4 lymph nodes down the road on a cancer. Now they have to put you into chemo, whereas if you didn't have the lymph nodes there, they may have been able to just treat it with radiation. But again, you don't even want the cancer, so you want to be it from an immune perspective that is not even an issue. So last slide I have here, inflammation becomes persistent because damage, impaired repair capability, and senescence, old age, our cells are not dying like they're supposed to, or we're just getting old and we're not producing what we need to. They all reinforce each other. So I have one thing, inflammation, that kind of put tentacles and started pulling triggers in various parts of our body. And as a result, the stability that I was looking for to maintain good health is not there. I'm not staying in that Goldilocks zone of my normal curve that we've talked about before. So good aging is not the absence of stress. It's keeping all of the damage under control at the right time, at the right pace, which is basically your sleep, your stress control, your exercise, and your nutrition. And with that, I am leaving it to you, and we will catch you next week. Red O'Loughlin signing out. Take care, bye.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram-Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Every day, we wake up knowing what we should do. We know we should take better care of ourselves. We know we should have the difficult conversation. We know we should stop making excuses. We know we should invest in our future. We also know we should take the first step. So why don't we? It's not because we aren't smart enough. It's not because we don't have enough information. And it's certainly not because we don't care. We live in a world overflowing with knowledge. Books, podcasts, videos, courses, experts, even artificial intelligence. We have more access to information than any generation before us. Yet so many of us are still waiting for the right time, waiting to feel ready, waiting until tomorrow. But tomorrow becomes next week becomes next year, and before you know it, another opportunity has passed us by. The truth is, knowing has never been the finish line. It's only the starting line. Our lives don't change because we know more. Our businesses don't grow because we know more. Our relationships don't improve because we know more. And our health doesn't transform because we know more. Everything changes when we act. When we choose courage over comfort, progress over perfection, action over intention. The question isn't, what else do we need to know? The question is, what are we going to do with what we already know? Stop. Why Knowing Isn't Enough by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Because knowing opens the door. Action changes your life. Available September 2026.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.